The fights in Sakamoto Days are simply peak, with incredible art, creative choreography, and flow that is unknown in the series. So today, I will be going over my top 5 favorite Sakamoto Days fights. Just as a quick side note, I'll be ranking these fights based on a few factors. Namely, the quality of their action, the relevance they have to the overarching plot, and aura. Now, let's rank fights. At number 5, we have Shania body Toramaru after Shin's fight with her was insane, and seeing that Shania was actually being piloted by Gaku was even crazier. Following that, we just have hype moments after hype moments. Gaku cooking the test instructors, Toramaru and Mafuyu pulling up to help, Shin realizing that he can just read Kaiji's thoughts to dodge Shania, and just when you think that they actually have a chance at beating him, Gaku locks in and bodies Shin and Kaiji. Not to mention, Sakamoto finally pulling up and giving a cathartic ending to the fight by slapping Shania around made for an incredible conclusion to an incredible fight. Beyond just raw aura and hype, this fight does wonders for the story too, giving Shin further character growth and planting the seed for the future plot points by allowing Mafuyu and Toramaru to be recruited by Slur. All in all, a great fight, placing it at number 5. At number 4, we have Sakamoto vs Kanaguri. I know I made a video on why this fight is the best, but I'm a changed man now. Despite this fight not being my favorite anymore, I still think it's incredible. Kanaguri is pretty much written to be annoying, so to see Sakamoto pull up and throw hands with him after the death of Satada was really satisfying. The action just works, with it especially picking up once Sakamoto breaks Kanaguri's camera, and seeing Sakamoto fling Kanaguri around in the library, only for Kanaguri to lock in and start blitzing Sakamoto, concluding their exchange with the return of skinny Sakamoto, was pure hype. And of course, the ending to this fight was absolute cinema. Sakamoto and Kanaguri truly proved why they're both GOATs, and Kanaguri even more so for faking his damage and essentially beating a skinny Sakamoto. This fight does a lot for the power scaling of the verse, sets up major plot points that are still ongoing with the departure of Akira and Sakamoto's current training arc, ultimately just making it a really good fight. My only gripe with Sakamoto vs Kanaguri is that it's interrupted by 2 other fights, with one of them being alright and the other being on this list, so let's move on. Entering into our top 3, we have Shishiba vs Yotsumura. What can I say? This fight was straight fire all the way through. Throughout the fight, Shishiba and Yotsumura retained their mentor and apprentice relationship, giving some entertaining banter in between the raw action. Of course, the action itself is once again top-notch, with a slew of panels and double-page spreads that are all super memorable. We got a massive lore dump on Yotsumura, which was really well executed and served to make me like Yotsumura even more. Usually, when a strong, mysterious character shows up, removing the mystery surrounding them kinda removes their aura and intrigue, but with Yotsumura, hearing his backstory just made me like him more. Not to mention the fact that both Shishiba and Yotsumura drop some of the coldest lines in the entire series, whether it be in Yotsumura's flashback or during the fight itself, only amping up the hype even more. And with this fight ranking so high, it is of course really important to the plot. Nagumo saving Yotsumura last second to make him his pawn was a great twist, and with Nagumo being kicked out of the order, it once again raises the question of what Yotsumura will do, and the fact that Shishiba thinks he straight up killed Yotsumura builds up anticipation for his reaction when he realizes Yotsumura is alive. The very fact that Shishiba was forced to kill his former boss and friend has planted the seeds for what some fans have theorized to be Shishiba's eventual betrayal of the JA and his removal from the order as well, just adding to the already long list of things that this fight sets up, giving it a well-deserved spot on this list. Our runner-up for my favorite fight is Takamura's 1v5. If someone asked me the definition of aura, I'd show them this fight. Takamura is so cool, so raw, and radiates so much aura that it's honestly unbelievable. The fact that he had been missing in action for the past 4 or so arcs just adds to the hype of his return, and Suzuki definitely did not miss with Takamura's return. His mere entrance had Sakamoto, Nagumo, and Uzuki sweating, and from there it was just banger after banger. Takamura cooking Nagumo and Uzuki casually, Sakamoto instantly pulling up to scrap with Takamura in his skinny form, Takamura sharpening his sword with Sakamoto's bullets, Gaku and Haruma pulling up to help Uzuki jump Takamura, only to be met with quite possibly the coldest line in the series. Takamura cutting Haruma in half, Uzuki cutting Takamura in half, all of these moments and more make this fight peak. This fight was an amazing way to end off the museum arc, and its aftermath shook up the status quo of the story a lot. Nagumo is out of the order, with him, Sakamoto, and Uzuki being listed as Class A extermination targets. The order has to rope in new members since they just lost 2. Uzuki houses the strongest character in the series as an extra personality, and we even get more insight into Uzuki's childhood. My only problem with this fight, which might not even turn out to be a problem, is Gaku's death. As of the writing of this video, we don't know if Gaku is alive or not. If he is, then you can ignore this, but if he's dead, then I do think it'd be a waste of Gaku as a character, and I don't think that the way he died in this fight was quite as good of a send-off as I would have liked to see. Being the first to damage Takamura is cool and all, but immediately flopping to the ground afterwards feels a little lackluster. Overall though, this fight is truly peak. Before we get to number 1, we have a couple honorable mentions. Those are Nagumo, Shishiba, and Osaragi versus Yotsumura and his goons, the first Shin versus Mafuyu, Sakamoto versus Apart, and Nagumo versus Minimalist. I'll give a few words for each of these. Nagumo, Shishiba, and Osaragi versus Yotsumura and his goons is like barely a chapter and a half long, but it's so cool. Nagumo is cool, Shishiba is cool, Yotsumura is cool, Osaragi is cool, and even though these three only fight for like a few panels, their entire exchange is great. Nagumo and Shishiba bodying the goons give a great showing of their power, and Yotsumura has so much aura. If this was a full-blown fight instead of a character introduction, it might have made the top 5 list. The first Shin vs Mafuyu is also honestly kind of underrated. It's a great introduction to Mafuyu as a character, once again with great art and choreography, and his dynamic with Shin is fairly entertaining. It isn't the most important fight though, and it's kind of short, so it's stuck here. Sakamoto vs Apart was honestly pretty solid. The location of this fight is one of the more unique ones, with it having plenty of verticality and scale, and Apart is kinda cool. Takamura making a guest appearance was dope, and the fight as a whole carries a solid amount of weight and just generally looks pretty cool. Our last honorable mention is Nagumo vs Minimalist. This is the first time we see Nagumo actually fight someone, and even though it was a low diff fight, it still offered great characterization, and while I don't care about Minimalist, Nagumo really cemented his GOAT status for me here, with all his tricks and Swiss Army knife of a weapon, so it gets an honorable mention. At number 1, we have Nagumo vs Gaku. What can I say? This fight was peak all the way through. Even just the panel of Nagumo encountering Gaku was hype. The art was on point, with literally all the double-page spreads being fire, and the hype of reading this weekly was through the roof. Both Nagumo and Gaku had a fair chance of getting cooked, keeping both Nagumo and Gaku fans at the edges of their seats, and the twist of Nagumo faking his death was executed really well. It's great to finally see more of Nagumo's weapons and just more of Nagumo in general, since we never really got to see him fight seriously. And additionally, this fight does a ton for the power scaling of the verse, with Gaku fans really reaping the rewards since he did so well against the second strongest order member. This also sets Gaku up to return in his fight against Takamura, and all in all, this fight just has it all. Great art, great choreography, great characterization, an immense amount of hype and aura, and of course, it features my GOAT Nagumo, which makes it my favorite fight in Sakamoto Days. But please, feel free to tell me why I'm a glazer and wrong in the comments.